It's Ward Green here, November 10th, 2021, and I wanted to make a video that I think is really important, but I wasn't able to. I decided I couldn't sacrifice the concentration that would require to make the video while I was doing it, but I wanted to show you what's involved in this process of fixing a particular issue, which seems to be very common. And people, well, what I'm trying to hopefully accomplish is help people to realize they don't have to sacrifice their perfectly good garden hoses. They don't have to cut them. They don't have to go about, chopping things up all the time. There are other methods. On my outdoor spigot, the hose was stuck, and it turned out I tried a few things. I tried tapping it with a hammer very lightly, or fairly lightly, and that may have loosened it up. But eventually I poured boiling water on it, and then I was able to loosen it with the vice grips. Wait a minute. Oh yeah, sorry. I forgot which way the camera was pointing here. I like to use a piece of cloth underneath the vice grip, between the vice grips, by wrapping it around the thing you're trying to loosen, and then clamp the vice grips to avoid damaging the vice grips. But this is my new problem, which I just solved. The outdoor spigot had the hose stuck. Now the other end of that same hose was also stuck, partly because of cold weather, and partly because of I don't know what, just being on there too long, I guess. But I mean, it's never happened before, despite the fact that I've been here many years. This particular issue never happened until this year. So I don't want to say that that I know nothing about it, because I do know something about it, based on the fact that it never happened until this year. I mean, there's something different about this year. But this nozzle was stuck, okay? It was really, really stuck, and you can still see the corrosion, or the calcium, or whatever that is, that was in the water. Probably because I have hard water. But if I can screw that back on, you can see, first of all, the gasket's not damaged inside. But I used a propane torch. I used a propane torch to heat this up. I can't get it back on, which is interesting. There it is. Okay, I've got it threaded. I used a propane torch to actually heat this up, and I didn't want to get it too hot because it would have melted the hose. It would have melted the gasket. But I did heat it up, and that didn't loosen it. But what I found, it didn't really do the job. Not like it did outside with the boiling water. I tried boiling water on this too, outside, and it was really stuck. So it didn't work. But I was using the boiling water, and I also used the wrench on the nut. There's a nut here. That nut is now gotten rounded over. The nut's been rounded over quite a bit by my inappropriate. Right, it's a nut that's got too many faces on it, which means the wrench can slip very easily. Now this threaded brass sleeve is supposed to thread on here, and as you can see, it's now hand tightenable. But I'm going to have to clean it up before I put it on there again, because it'll get stuck again. But what I wanted to show you, I'm going to have to find a way to mount this camera to show you this, because I want to show you this. I just realized I didn't bring a tripod or anything. I don't think I need one, but I do need something to mount this camera. I need to devise a method here. So I will try to show you this. Yeah, let's come over here like this. And where's the camera? There it is. If I put this here, I can just tilt that perfect. Okay. Just use a heavy tool to help me prop the camera up. Now, I don't know, I won't be able to know that you're seeing me I'll just trust that this camera is still running. When I'm doing this, the best method, okay? Let me make sure you can still see me. Yeah, the best method is I have a steel vise. That's steel. It's got a couple of steel faces on it. The faces are steel with wood inside. I can bang it on the wood, but I'd rather bang it on the steel. So I use a ball peen hammer. Any hammer would work. But what I want to do is lay the, when it's stuck, I don't want to do it now, but when it's stuck, is lay the hose part that's stuck, lay that part on the metal vise. It's like an anvil. You want something big and made of steel or something solid. Then you tap it. Okay, but you can tap it quite hard if it's stuck. But what happens, you keep turning it and tapping it, and you can tap it, let's see, I can come down. I guess you can see me if I come down. You can tap it a lot harder than that. Like you can tap it, you tap it quite hard. But as you keep turning it, and you're tapping it, but you turn it a fairly small amount each time and then tap it again. But as you do that, eventually, what happens is you feel it come loose. It's a feeling. You feel it come loose. It's not, so now it's loose. I can hand loosen it, but you will feel it come loose. It's amazing. That's the thing you need to realize. You actually feel when the hammer hits it and it comes loose, there's a different feeling to when it was stuck. And at that point, you know you've broken the, whatever was sticking. You've broken that calcium or whatever it was. So that was the best way to actually accomplish that. And now I don't have to damage. I mean, there's some damage, obviously. You can see there's some scratching on the, some of the nut is rounded over, but normally you don't use that nut, so that doesn't matter. This nut is rounded over, which is really not important as long as I never have to get it off with a wrench anymore. And it's still usable too. It's still usable with a wrench. I could get, if I had two pairs of vice grips, I could use one pair of vice grips on that and the other pair on this. That's probably what I need, is another pair of vice grips or a pair of locking pliers, which I don't have, for the nut part. But this part that threads, you can't get a good grip on that with your hands, but you can, if you clamp the vice grips so you can just barely get it to lock. These vice grips they're like locking, they have a lock point where they snap and they lock into position. If that lock point is difficult to get on, then you know it's going to hold fairly well. This is brass, so these, let me show you the vice grips. Yeah, let's show you the vice grips. Here's the vice grips. So if you use a pair of vice grips, they will lock like that. If that locking point is difficult to achieve, then it means it will really bite into the brass. You don't want it to slip on the brass, so it has to be quite difficult to lock. When it's difficult to lock, then you take it off by pressing on this lever. I need to do this one-handed. The way to get the lock of the vice grips undone is you press on that lever. Press that lever. That's how you do it. See, that unlocks it. And then you lock. Again, you lock it like that. And then you press on that lever. You press this lever toward this tightening. This is how you tighten and loosen the jaws of the vice grip. You tighten and loosen to get the amount of tightness you're looking for. Then you lock it, and then you pull the tightening screw against the release mechanism. You pull the two together, which can be quite difficult if it's locked very tightly. You pull those two together, and that opens it. And then that's how you get it off. So, but it's got steel jaws on it. The steel jaws have a serrated edge, and that will bite into brass quite readily. So that's why we've got a couple of little points on this brass that have been significantly altered because of the work I did today. But this is still a very functional, usable thing, and now it's hand loosenable. I can't do it with one hand. Can I? No, maybe not. Well, maybe I can if I put it in the vise. Let's put it in the vise. Yeah, right there. Yeah, so if I put it in the vise, I can loosen this by hand now and get it off. Now this is my vise. This is what I was using as an anvil. I was laying that on top of it and then smashing it with the hammer until it broke free. So that's a very handy thing. Now, I mean, people try WD-40. They try, they think WD-40 will loosen it, but that's not likely to work. What you can do, though, is before you get into this problem, you can actually put Teflon tape over top of this hose. Put something, grease, either grease or Teflon tape or anything that can help to lubricate the thread before you put this on it. Put your lubricant on there first. That's what I will be doing in the future. I've never had to do it in the past, but now I've learned. But this to me is extremely useful. Okay, because this is like a calcium that was built up. Let me take a look. And it's only really locked on the outer couple of threads, on these outer threads, not on the inside. It was only locked on the outside. So banging that with the hammer, you want to bang it right near this edge, right near the place that's locked is where you want to hit it. But you're just hitting right on top. This is laid in here. Let's tighten this. Let's loosen the vise. Let's get this out of here. I don't want to tighten the vise on the hose. I don't want to bend the hose. Right? So you don't want to bend your hose. You don't want to tighten the vise so much. If you have a steel vise, you could damage something. So you want to be very careful. But I've got a wooden vise, but also I'm very careful with it. But what you want to, when you're banging with the hammer, you're banging right, there. You're not banging over here. You're banging more there. You're trying to loosen. But I mean, I was just banging. I didn't know, so I was banging right. I was just banging right on the center of it. Just banging everywhere and going all the way around. Banging, but banging a lot harder than that. But banging. And because it's a calcium, it's very hard. You're not going to get some lubricant put on there afterwards that's going to release it. If you had something that could dissolve calcium, then maybe that could work. But it would have to dissolve calcium, whatever that mineral is. It looks like calcium because it's white. But anyway, if maybe somebody else has a better answer, but this to me is better than any of the answers on YouTube. And it works better than the propane torch, which could also damage the gasket or the hose, because that's just a rubber gasket inside here. It was inside. If I'd heated it up too much, that would have melted. Doesn't seem to have been damaged. So this has been a very successful salvage operation where I've salvaged this and I've salvaged the hose. And it only took about, I don't know, 5 minutes or something. But I did wrestle with the wrench, the adjustable wrench, the vice grips. It's easier to lock the vice grips on first and don't lock them on in a position where you can no longer get the wrench, where you can no longer get the wrench onto the nut. So you have to lock this in the right position above the nut, and on the you lock it onto this nozzle flange, and then there has to be room for this wrench to then come underneath that vice grip onto the nut, and then you tighten that on the nut, and then you can, basically all you're doing is you're going to put them something like this, right? So let's say the nut is underneath. You're going to put them something like this. So when you're ready, you're going to just then twist them in that direction, because that will loosen. Counterclockwise loosens. So you're just going to then push to loosen. So I wrestled with that, and it didn't. At first I was afraid to tighten the vice grips too much, so it kept slipping. Eventually I got it locked well enough, but it wouldn't turn. So I ended up at that point where this would not come loose. This was not coming loose, right? It was inside the vice grips. Let's open that up. So that's like that. It was inside the vice grips now, but twisting these against each other would not work. It didn't come loose. Instead the nut, instead the wrench was turning and stripping the nut. So the nut underneath, which is on the hose, which is this thing, this nut was just being damaged by the wrench. The vice grip was this vice grip was not slipping, it was tight, so it was good. I got that not slipping, but then the wrench was then slipping on the nut and rounding over the nut. See the damage? That's damage on the corner of that nut. It's got damage. So the solution was not to keep trying to do that, but to stop, get the hammer, get this hose and nozzle out of the vice grips, lay it on here, but on the metal, lay it on top of metal, somewhere on the metal, and then on the metal, when it's on the metal, smash it with the hammer, not too hard, but hard, definitely like hard enough. And then but if that's not hard enough, maybe a little harder until, but you have to move, while every time you hit it, and then rotate a bit and then hit it again, rotate it and hit it again, rotate it and hit it again. Keep doing that, and if you feel it come free, then you can feel it. This will feel looser. When the hammer hits it, you'll feel it jiggle. It won't be so tight. You can feel it. When it breaks free, you'll feel it. And if not, you can try hitting a little harder and go rotate around again. But that is far less destructive of a method than using a hacksaw or using a cutter, to cut through a perfectly good garden hose. Now I'm going to have to clean these threads up somehow with some sharp implements. Try to clean this up so it doesn't get stuck again. That might have been part of the problem. Might have been I never cleaned it up from previous years. That might have been the problem. The threads weren't clean enough, but I can lubricate the threads. I can use Teflon tape, and you wrap the Teflon tape around the thread. You wrap it around the thread part. That's how you use Teflon tape. You wrap, I can't find it. Where is it? Where's this? There it is. You wrap the Teflon tape, okay, around this. Wrap it around clockwise. So still running? Yep. This is an 18-minute video so far. You wrap around. Let's put this in here. I'm going to trip on the hose here if I'm not careful. I want to show you how to do this. Teflon tape is very easy. It doesn't stick. It's not sticky tape. Teflon tape is just a very flexible. You pull it. You can pull it and stretch it. If you're not careful, it'll bunch up on itself. But Teflon tape, you just wind it clockwise around the thread a couple of times, and then you tear it off. It just tears very easily. You just hold it with one hand and tear it with the other hand. So you basically press it on here with one hand while you're tearing it with the other hand after you've wound it a couple of times. Some people put a lot of it on, but you don't need much. And a couple of turns. But there you go. I mean, if you're trying to water seal something, you might wind it more, but we're not trying to water seal it. We're just trying to prevent it from sticking or from getting calcium. You know, we're just trying to prevent it from binding in the future. So that's, but I haven't tried the Teflon tape. I can't even say if it works, but I think it should help quite a lot. And it will also seal it. It'll also cause it to seal better. The threads will seal better, so the gasket won't be as important either. So it should be good. So Teflon tape is preferable to using grease, which is messy. Teflon tape is not messy. It's got no adhesive. I've got it. Maybe I have some right here. I've got it around. I keep it in my plumbing. Let's see. Probably I have some over here. Do I? Yep, wait a minute. See it. Is that it? No, that's not it. Oh well, it's okay. It's dark over here too. I should have or could have turned the light on, but yeah, it's very easy. Teflon tape is very easy. It's just like surgical tape. It's in the same kind of a container, but it doesn't have any strength to it. You can tear it very easily, so that's the answer. Or, you know, you could use grease or whatever you want. Or the other alternative is always unscrew this every week or so, every few weeks, unscrew it again. Make sure you can get it off. Don't let it go for months. Like I had mine on here all summer. I think maybe this was the first summer I ever did that. So that was the lesson. That's the lesson. Do not forget, or I mean, remember. Yeah, I thought of that today. You know, when did Jesus ever say, "Do not forget"? He didn't say that, right? He said, "Remember." So, or positive statements, because the negative statement implies that what you're saying that you're trying to deny is actually true. Like if I say, "Do not forget," the only word that you're going to remember is the word forget. So it's better to say remember, to keep things positive always, and to use only the affirmative of everything, and to avoid using the negative, because the negative will be remembered as the opposite of what you want it to be. That's my advice on the use of negative statements, which I think is very... I think Tony Robbins has advocated this as well. I think he's right. I think he's quite right about that. Affirmative. Be positive, be affirmative all the time. Find the assertive, affirmative case or form of what you're trying to say. Say it in an affirmative. That's my advice about that. But anyway, this is... I was very, very happy that I was able to do this. I mean, this piece itself might not cost much. I could replace the end of the hose for a few dollars, but it's brass. It's not totally for nothing. So it's and it would shorten the hose slightly, but it would never be as good as the original either. It would never hold as tightly. So it's always better to avoid having to cut things and destroy things. It's just better to salvage. This is Ward Green, November 10th, 2021. I love you. Goodbye for now.